Yo, 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 what is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today we're back for another hot one. Today is going to be focusing on hero pairings for the PvP. I'm really excited about this video because it's been in the works, I guess, ish for a while, and I have been getting a lot of requests to put out a hero pairings video. So before we get started, as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you sub, like, ring the notification bell, and if you want to join and be a part of our conversation, hit up the Discord. You can find a link to that in the pinned comment description right down below. And remember, new videos are coming out every day at 14 UTC. I do want to give a few shout-outs real quick before I get started, because there was 3 people that I had reached out to and asked some questions for that were able to give me some help, and one person who really went above and beyond in helping. The first two I want to give a shout-out to is Leanin. I believe he's in TA for SS1, the man, the myth, the legend. And then we have Coffee Maker or Coffle Maker. I can't remember if he's still in TA right now or not, so I apologize, but you can let me know in the comments, Coffee. And then lastly, I want to give a huge shout out to Classic Job, who's a part of Forbidden in SS1 right now. He really, great guy. Everyone was so helpful, and again, because of my limitations of just having low power on this account from just not actively playing it, but eventually I will be once our project starts. But again, Joe really helped out in me with quite a few testing scenarios, and being able to kind of take away some good information was absolutely fantastic, so huge shout out to Joe. Now let me go ahead and we're going to get into showing you the data and everything that we have. So where do I, actually it would be helpful if I could click on stuff. Here we go. So for here, there's a few factors that went into essentially getting to this point of how we came up with certain pairings. So you have the type here, which is important, right? Physical or magic, right? That depends on how the unit scales itself. And let me just give you an example of that. So if I go in-game and we're on Eliana, you can see here that you'll have certain units that will have either damage factors, and it says scales with attack, so that means that it could be physical or magic attack. You have other units, for example, like Nika, where it says scales with physical attack, right? So you're not going to put a mage on this hero, right, for the unit type, because it just wouldn't scale off of, or it wouldn't allow for the active skill to scale appropriately, right? So you're basically limiting yourself on overall damage done. And then we have, right, where to obtain. I have this as well in the spreadsheet. And again, you can find this on the spreadsheet. A link to this will be in the description and pinned comment as well. And then just go over to the hero pairing tab. We have attributes, which I thought was important, because if you're trying to, for example, let's say you wanted to do like a control F and I wanted to type in infantry, I could find out that, okay, well, I have 4 infantry heroes here, right? So it just kind of makes it easy if you want to be able to figure out, where might a more ideal or a possible ideal pairing be. And then we have the range. Now the range essentially is your skill range, right? So if I go here and I look at a hero, right, and I look at Eliana, you can see attack range very far, right? That means that I could essentially put mages on this hero, and that is where the skill range will be able to activate at its farthest point, right? It's kind of an up to point. Now, it can still activate if you're close range. It just means that you are able to distance yourself at max range up to, right, what that description is. Okay, now let's go here. And one of the interesting things I want to point out, right, and this kind of goes into what we were testing, is that, and this is really important, right? So essentially what we figured out, and I'm going to show this here, right? So if you're doing, as an example, if you have, so what we figured out is that you have kind of a 1 range tier cushion that will still work. An example is if you're running a near primary, right, or a melee primary, and the deputy or the secondary is near, it'll work. If you're running near primary and medium deputy, it'll work, right, and so on and so forth, right, which would basically be far, very far, or sorry, medium far, and then far, very far, right? Those will work. Essentially, as long as the primary troop, the primary hero, is a shorter distance than the secondary, right, it'll always work. However, if you flip it around and the primary is very far and the secondary is melee, then it's probably not going to work for that skill range, right? So that's important. What we essentially figured out is that you kind of have this 2-tier range that you can do. And I probably have to show you in game once I unlock some more heroes, but I hope for those that are understanding that it makes some sense, and you can test this out as well. And I actually, if you want, I'll just show you. I can actually show you a quick test here. So just in one example. So if I go here, and let's say that I select Eliana. So Eliana is very far. If I was to then select, in this case, or I'm sorry, right, I have Nika here, right? So Nika's physical. Right? So if I remove everyone, right now I have Axeman selected. So that's why Axeman is a close range unit. So what it's doing is the unit type is forcing me to go closer. If I remove this, and let's say I go Spearman. So if I go Spearman for physical, right? You're going to see this. Nika's skill attack range is melee, which is shorter than the marksman unit's attack range, right? So again, what this means is that because Nika's melee and the marksman range is probably more, I'd say marksman is like far, right? Like siege is probably medium, marksman is far, and then you have mages, which is very far. So you're not seeing anything done here. Same thing if I go to mages. Same thing happens, right? The difference here is that not only does it say the skill range is melee won't work, but it says Nika's physical skill damage doesn't match. Why? Because mages is magic, attack based. However, if I was to go like wolf riders, right, then that'll work for cav units, right? Because it's basically probably just as close, because we're not running spring warden where you have like ranged cav. So they're most likely treating wolf cav and infantry here for Wilderberg as near, if probably not melee range. So again, just wanted to explain that. Now, when we go back here, you're looking at some of the pairings. Now, I want to point out that when it comes to the pairings itself, let me get to the skill categories. So this is something that I put together just to kind of give you a nice little high-level overview. And in short, what this means is this is like single target damage, right? This is general damage, flat damage. S is for single target, and then you have an M here, which is for multi-target. That's 2 or more. The damage at max level, and then you have like what each skill is. So left to right, each of these wall brackets indicates the first skill, the second skill, the third skill, the fourth skill, and then if a unit has an additional skill as their fifth, in lieu of an awakening skill, which is an enhancement of one of the first 4 skills. So you can see here, right, damage, flat damage plus a flat buff, PvE, cavalry buff, and then a flat buff. So this, essentially this unit, right? This hero has 2 skills that are universal. The other 2, one is for PvE and one is for cavalry, So it just kind of goes to show you if you're looking to pair something with someone else. Like, so an example would be this, right? If you're looking at Bakshi and Emrys, that's probably a really good pairing when it comes to running a cav unit, right? Now, if we had, 50 or 100 heroes to choose from, then you could, and they eventually over time add in more legendary cavalry heroes, this could make a lot of sense to run, right? If you're looking to run like a glass cannon outlier, a glass cannon type pairing, where essentially that pairing type would be going around and just kind of hitting one-off units that are spread out or far away from a fight, and you're just kind of picking them off one by one, right, with speed and damage. Otherwise, right, if you were to do something like an Emrys Nika, right, where you have Emrys is near and Nika is, where am I going here, right, and Nika is melee, right, then from what we tested with having a 1 range difference, right, this should still work if you're running, right, that specific physical type, right, because in this case, you'd have to be running Cav for obviously here, and then with Nika you'd be running right, as long as you're running physical, right, which Cav is physical, right, these should work. And so I just again wanted to also take the time to explain that, because it is important to understand that distinction. Now when we get to the remainder of pairings, right, you'll notice some of these are going to be pretty consistent. An example of this is when you get to Cav, right, a lot of these are the same here. When you get to infantry, right, you'll see something like if I wanted to run Garwood, right, then an example I could run when it came to just open field, like Madeline Nika could be an example, Bakar Eliana. And you'll notice here, and just to give you some interesting stats, right, there's 20 total heroes currently. 17 out of the 20 heroes between legendary and epics, right, 10 out of those 17 are physical. And you can actually see that here, right? And then you look here bottom right, the count is 10. If you look at magic, right, I have 4. And then you have the remaining 3, which is Eliana, Indis, and Hosk. And these are essentially kind of universal heroes, if you will. Why? Because they kind of have, like, their overall, right? You see here that each of them are overall. And that to me is essentially meaning that they're kind of flex picks. You can kind of put them in almost anywhere. And you can even see on here, right? You can almost use these as deputies for anyone if you absolutely need something. And the same thing as a primary. You could basically run them a primary, and for the most part, right, probably almost anyone that would be a secondary. Now, sure, you might have some heroes that are more favorable to these 3 than others, but it just goes to show you that if you take time to read the skills, you look at what the types are, you look at what the ranges are, the attributes, and then you factor in things like skill categories. And an example of this is that, I may not run someone like Hosk, who's or I'm sorry, let me pick someone else here, right, that I can give a better example for. I guess Bakshi is probably an okay example, right, where 2 out of 3 of these, right, are not usable, right, 2 out of 4 of these, right, we have PvE and Cavalry. Another example is if I look at Alistair here. You can see that one of his skills, right, so he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, he has 5 skills. 2 out of 5 of the skills are not usable if you're not doing a rally and you're not running cavalry, right? But an example is if I was running infantry. Only 3 out of the skills would be. One's damage, which is a multiple damage of 600 damage factor for 2 or more, and then you have 2 buff skills. So it might be more relevant for me to, as an example, try and find maybe an infantry based where I'm getting a little bit more out of it, right? So in this situation, I have 3 out of 4 skills, right? For Bakar, where I have a damage plus a buff, I have an infantry buff, I have a debuff skill, and then I have a damage over time. That's 4 out of 5, actually. So you can, if you look at it like that, from a high-level overview, you can see that you kind of have to factor a few things in when it goes into finding the ideal pairing. And when you see the greater than symbol, this is just more of a general guideline, as in, okay, hey, let's just say you have everyone available. And the way that this basically works is it kind of goes from like a pay-to-win to a free-to-play, left to right, right? And you'll notice that as you start kind of getting more, you'll notice that when you kind of get more to the end of these, in an ideal situation, you'll notice there's more epics there. But the epic options are really more along the lines of where that kind of free-to-play range is. And again, you guys are more than welcome to take a look. I think this actually shows you everything. I don't even have to scroll down because we don't have anything there for elites. But what I will say is I hope that this video, if anything, did a good job of explaining the process and how you as an individual can go about finding your pairings and ones that will work and that will be more and that would be ideal because you understand how to go about finding pairings. When it came to the people who helped me out with the information, again, as a secondary shout out, thank you so much. I thought it was really interesting to kind of find out when it came to the differences of ranges and if you're running a primary or a deputy, how that works. And who knows, right? If that stays the same, maybe they change it in the future and then, all of a sudden you cannot use, or they'll make it less likely that you basically have to use the same type and you can't kind of have that +1 or -1 range that you can still attach. So again, those things, at least with how they are now, right, is unique and somewhat interesting. And again, I'll leave the question to you guys now is, again, what do you guys think about I guess the explanation that I've provided for all these different factors? Do you feel like it has helped you out? Right. I also would love to hear what pairings you guys use on your heroes. Right. Again, whether some of them are the same that I have as far as the order, if maybe you prioritize some others before ones that I have listed, I would love to hear. Let me know anything and everything in the comments down below. That is it for me. As always, until next time, I will catch you later.